Good morning, friends. I am on my way to the cabin, and I thought I would stop and show you what is possibly the loveliest rest area I've ever been to. I usually stop here. If you're from anywhere around here, you might recognize that's Lake Chautauqua behind me. And it's just a beautiful rest stop and a beautiful morning. I hope you're having a beautiful morning wherever you are. Good morning, friends. Here we are up at the little cabin, and I have a fun idea for a project today. Now, if you're watching this, then that means it worked because it's still an idea up here, but you have already seen the finished product. I have a couple of these fun little clasps. You can get these from Amazon. I'll put a link below. And I've used them before. The problem is that it seems like no matter what size I think I'm ordering, the size that comes is a little bit different. So using a commercial pattern to go with these can be a little bit tricky. I'm thinking it would be best if I simply show you how to make your own pattern for whatever size of these clasps that you may have. I'm thinking I'd like to do two projects, maybe an eyeglasses case, a longer one, and a little coin purse. So that's what we're gonna do. I've got my hand crank machine, I've got my sat iron, I've got a bag full of fun scraps that was gifted to me by a friend. These are all feed sack pieces. So how fun is that gonna be? So let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're gonna need is something to draw on. I happen to have a cracker box here. It could be a piece of paper, it could be anything. I've got my handle, my clasp. I'm going to set it here at the top. And I've got something to write with. You could use a pencil. I'm using a Sharpie in the hopes that you'll be able to see better. What I'm going to do is simply hold this in place, and I'm going to trace around the outside. I'm going to make an ever so slight bump there. I'm just following it. I'm just holding my Sharpie up. It's kind of naturally drawing a line on the outside. This is going to be my coin purse. Now, I can tell you from the last one that I made it too big down here, and it was too hard to get the stuff out. We're going to just go like this. Instead of making a boxed bottom, I think I'm just going to make a curve. That looks pretty even to me. I am okay with that. Might come up just a little bit here. Fill that in. Fill that in. I've sort of got an oval. We can put a T for top here so we don't forget, I suppose. That's the shape that I'm going to go with, and we're going to see how that works. So what I have here are my two templates. I'm happy with these. I'm good with the way that those look. I feel like their shape is pretty good. I'm good with that. It's meant to be fun, meant to be a fun, simple project. The next thing you're going to need is some sort of interfacing or batting. I brought up 3 different pieces with me. These are going to be scraps and end pieces. The first I have here is a piece of fusible fleece. I only have a small piece, and keep in mind you're going to need 2, and I can get 2 out of this. So I think I'm going to use this fusible fleece for this little change purse. So now that I've got my pattern pieces cut out and I've decided on my interfacing, it's time to get my fabric ready. I really hadn't dumped this bag out yet, and I just did, and what a lot of fun pieces these are. There are a lot that are cut into hexagons, and there's actually some hexagon blocks here. Aren't these a treasure? Just think of the hours spent on these. And I'm going to hold this up because if you can just see those tiny stitches, isn't that just a treat? So these are a lot of feed sack fabrics, which are so fun when you start digging through them. There's actually some little pieces. Look how people saved every scrap where there's two sewn together. I'm going to use all of this. I was thinking maybe I could just jump in and start, but these need to be ironed. They're just too, they've been in this bag for probably 50 years, who knows. So I'm going to give them a good press. I'm going to sort through them and get myself some pieces to work with. I may put a few of these little hexagons in there. Look how fun those are. So I'm going through this treasure trove of scraps, and let me tell you, it really tells a story. Some of these pieces that this dear woman saved are as small as this. I mean, that just tells a story, right? And what I'm doing is I'm kind of pulling out some strips or pieces, and I find one that I think I'm going to want to use, like say this. I'm sort of opening it up, flattening it out, and hitting it with a spritz of starch. And I'm just sort of stacking them like that. I've got myself a nice stack here that's ready to be ironed. That starch will help. Now, some people might be wondering, should I have washed these? You certainly could. I opted not to because they don't have an odor and they don't have any visible grime on them. Now, I'm sure if I soaked them, you would see age and that water would probably yellow and get funny. For what I'm doing, I'm okay with it. So I'm just starching them and I'm going to go to town. But I want to show you the best treasure that I just found in here. Look at this. This is kind of my vision I had for what I want to make. Look at all these tiny pieces that have been sewn together. Some of these are just so tiny. And this was mixed in there with all of that. So I may put it in, or I may just save it. I'm not sure. If I just save it, nothing will ever come of it. It kind of tells a story. I mean, those two pieces are two individual pieces that are sewn together. It's like this dear lady was saving every last piece to make something. I love that. So I've got my sad iron heated up here. We're burning some lumber outside today, so I had it heating on the outside fire. It'll stay hot here for a little while before I have to heat it again. So I've got my pieces. This is one of the larger scraps. It's been sitting with the starch for a moment, a few minutes really. I'm just going to press it. It's not a speedy process, I'm not going to lie, but it will get the job done. Oh, and look I broke my own rule, so here's a learning for you. I just got a little smudge on my fabric. This was on the outdoor fire and I really should have wiped it off first. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to grab this and I'm just going to wipe it off. Now we'll be fine. So I let my iron heat up a little bit more. You really need to have it really hot, especially if you're using the spray starch. And look just how nice and flat these are coming out. That starch really made a nice difference. It's going to make these much easier to work with. It's so fun looking at all these different fabrics. Okay, I'm ready to do a little sewing. What I've done is I went ahead and marked my shape on both sides. I just think that's going to make it easier. I don't know, this is still sort of an experiment. This is the bumpy side, and I've got this weird piece here that's already been partly stitched together. I'm going to trim it off. Let's put it there. Let's put it like that. I don't know. We're going to stick it off the edge. Let's do that. And I'm going to go ahead and just start sewing. I'm going to grab got a little strip here, and I'm going to start on this edge, and I'm going to put it right on top. This is sort of how you'd make a crazy quilt. Well, it is basically. We're going to come over here, and I am going to put the edge of my 1/4-inch foot right on the edge of that, just like so. And I'm going to just stitch down the edge here. That's probably good. So I've sewn down the edge there. I'm going to flip this back. I'm just going to finger press. That's going to be adequate for this. And we just need to trim it across here to make a straight line. I like to fold it over my scissors and do that. So we've got a straight line. Now we're going to pick what side we want to sew on next. I'm going to say let's go down this side. I'm going to grab another. Here's a cute little piece. Isn't that cute? I'm going to put it down. It'll fit. I'm going to kind of come over that corner just like so. Stick it on top. I'm going to stitch down. Till I know I've come past my piece of fabric. There we go. And there's my, flip that over. How cute is this going to be? Now, look at that. It actually made a straight edge there. If it didn't, I would trim it to a straight edge. I'm going to add another piece, sew it and flip it. And I'm just going to continue in that fashion. Okay, I've got both of my pieces sewn and trimmed. Now, a little something I want to show you. A couple things here. Here is our hardware that's going to fit on top. Isn't that going to be cute? Oh my golly, it's going to be so cute. However, I'm looking at this and I feel like for a coin purse, it's a little larger than I think I want. And I say this from experience because the last one I made was a little too big and it was hard to get down in the bottom. Now this would be perfect for spools of thread, like a little mini sewing kit or something. And because I don't want to waste any of the feed sack, I'm not going to trim it down, except I am, and here's why. On the top of this one, you can see right there that I was a little scant in that seam there, and I don't want that to work its way undone. So what I'm going to do, see, nothing is ever lost. I am going to put these two together so I do them both the same, and I'm going to just trim a wee bit off of here, at the most 1/4 of an inch. That'll take care of that. And then the next thing we're going to do is wherever on your hardware, wherever this little hinge hits on the sides, we're going to make a little mark with a pencil, or you could make a little snip with scissors. That's what we're going to do next. All right, so what I have here is a piece of fabric for my lining. This is not a vintage piece of fabric. It's just a light purple that I thought coordinated nicely, so I brought it with me. So we've got this fabric. I have cut out 2 pieces in the shape, the same shape as the outside. What we're going to do is put these 2 faces together. We're also going to mark our little hinge spot on the handle. Let's come in where you can really see this. So what we're going to do is where the hinge hits, we're going to make a little snip. Or you could use a pencil or a marking tool. I'm going to snip through both pieces of fabric. Okay, and we still have our little snips on our front here as well. Now what we're going to do, we have these faces together. We're going to clip it around, because what we're going to do is sew from the snip around to the other snip, leaving the top open. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to sew the 2 fronts together from the snip around the bottom to the other snip, leaving the top open. Okay, so I've got my piece. This is the top where the hardware is going to go. Here's one snip. Here's the other snip. And I'm just going to sew from this snip. Now if you're not using a hand crank machine, or you have a machine that has a back stitch on it, I would probably lock that stitch in. I don't have that on here, but I've adjusted to a pretty short stitch, so I'm not terribly worried. I'm just working my way around the corner. And I'm going to stitch up to that little slit. So I've done this. Okay, so here is our outside, and this is our lining. Okay, with the right side on the inside, we're just gonna tuck it inside like this. Yeah, this is just the right size. Okay, so there's the inside and there's the outside. And you just want to tuck it in with your fingers and get it so it's nice and even. Now, because I had a little trouble coming around those corners, see what's happening is my lining is popping up a little bit. That's okay. We're just going to trim that off. Don't worry about that. There's no need for that to stop us because it fits beautifully inside. So that's what matters. That's what's important. So there it is there, and I am just going to trim that off a little bit. Totally fine. And now it's time to we're just going to trim it off flush. So it's interesting because this is all your raw edges, right? And that is completely not how you normally do things, but it's how we're doing this. I have sewn a tiny stitch seam allowance, tiny seam allowance, a stitch with a tiny seam allowance right along just to hold these together, okay? I did one by hand, I did one by machine. I don't know that one is any easier than the other, so I think whichever is easier for you. But that'll hold them securely together so that we can now attach our hardware. When I was packing to come up here, I had this loose idea in my mind. So I grabbed a couple spools of pearl cotton from my stash, and they both I knew would go. So just now I'm thinking, oh, which color am I going to use? And I think it has to be purple because the purple just looks really good. So let's zoom down and see how we're going to do this. All right. Now it can be a little fiddly, but once you get going, it's not difficult. Don't be frightened off by the hand sewing aspect here. We've got our needle. I threaded it with my pearl cotton and put a knot in the end. Getting started is the trickiest bit, and what you want to do is get your piece started in there, whichever side is easier for you to start from. I'm feeling like I'm going to start on this right-hand side. We're going to tuck that up in there. You just have to get started, okay? Once you get started, and what I'm actually going to do is poke my needle through my, let's try this, and then we're going to come up through our hole. There we go. Once you get it going in there, it's not bad at all. It's just getting it going. I've come up. Okay, I'm going to go down into the next hole, okay, and pull it out. And I'll be sure you get views from all the angles here. I know right now you're not seeing it all. Okay, and now I'm going to come up, skipping a hole. See how I skipped a hole there? There's a stitch, skipped a hole, and I've come up a stitch. And we're going to come through, pull that snugly, and now we're going to go back into the hole that we skipped and pull it out. And I'm going to turn this piece so that you can see the inside here. See, it makes a nice finished edge here. Your stitching gets hidden under that edge. And just trust me that once you get going on it, it'll fall into place, okay? So now we've come here, we're going to come up through that hole. Oops, I keep getting stuck on my little. And going down in to the next one, right there. Now we're going to come up into this hole. I think the biggest idea here, we're going to go down into the next hole, is that you get a few back stitches in there, okay? Don't get over freaked out if you feel like you're losing the rhythm. So now this is where we're going to come up here. And we're going to go backwards. I may have done one of these wrong. I don't know. And up here. And we're going to go in. This is the basic rhythm. See, we've got a stitch. We're going to come up. So you kind of only skip that hole the first time. And then we're going to go backwards. And back out of this hole. And now let's take a look at the back of the work so that you can see. See how there are back stitches in there. I feel like I may have gotten one wrong in the beginning, but it's not really a huge deal. And look how it's tucked up in there for the most part. All your raw edges are hidden right up inside there. And once you get going, now we're not having to fuss so hard holding it in there. We're going to go back down, and we're almost halfway there. And we're going to come up, and we're going to go backwards. And oops, there we go. Up, down, and up and backwards. Once you get the rhythm, you go right through there. And we're going to do that all the way down, tie a knot, and we're going to do the other side. Oh my goodness, isn't that cute? Well, I'm all finished with my little project, and I just couldn't be happier. Isn't that the cutest little thing? There's my purple inside. Now, my corners aren't as perfect as I'd like here, but when I get home, I'm going to take a little fabric glue and put it in there and poke those up inside this channel. And I think then it'll be just perfect. I just think that is so cute. I still plan on making my eyeglasses case. And look at this. That piece I showed you that was all pieced together that I found. It's like the exact size that I'm going to make that little case. Isn't that hilarious? And it's exactly the look I was going for. It's so crazy that I would have found that in there. So all very fun and exciting. I found out a few tidbits about my machine. I've gotten a lot of questions, so I jotted them down so I wouldn't forget. Ismax was my source. It's a great source. I'll link it down below. It's just everything you need to know about singers especially, but lots of sewing machines. So this is a, oh, I forgot to write the model number down. Anyway, I'll get that. Between 1910 and 1912 is when this was manufactured. It came from the Elizabethport, New Jersey factory, which I always think is so fun to know where it was made. The average cost of a sewing machine between those years of 1910 and 1912 was $36.80 to $41.60. So I went to the inflation calculator, which is fun to look up, and you can start in 1913. So in 1913, $38 in today's money would be $1,203.52. That's a lot of money. So isn't that just fascinating. I just am fascinated with the history of sewing machines. But anyway, I'll put the model number of the machine up in the top because I can't remember what it was, but it's a fun machine. There are some available on Etsy. I had a peek, so the hand cranks are out there. And if you have any questions, put them down below. Tell me where you're watching from. It's been really fun to see some of the comments where people are watching from. So make yourself a cute little coin purse. And I hope that you have a great day. Go make something beautiful. Thanks for watching.